Hello, everybody. This is Jody Franklin. I'm here with Scott Rattigan, and I'm so glad to have him here today because he was generous enough to come on and answer your legal questions today. And Scott is unique in that for the past 4 years, he has focused his practice exclusively on functional medicine practitioners and coaches. So he's a real expert in this field. If you're not familiar with him at all, um, he's the go-to guy in this field, and I'm so excited to have him on today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Now, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story, what got you into this, and also I have a bunch of questions for you, but maybe kind of give an overview of your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of fell into functional medicine the way most of my clients found it, is kind of through a personal story. So not me specifically, but my wife, like many of you, was kind of frustrated with her own health. And she knew the tools in conventional medicine and knew that they were not helping her at that point. And then she went to an IFM module, the first one, and then kind of opened her eyes to it. And therefore, I've been on the journey with her ever since. And so when she started to open her practice, I was working at a big commercial litigation law firm in Orlando. And we went to the healthcare partner, 2 floors up, and said, can you help us out? And like most of the doctors that I've come to meet and learn about, he couldn't really help us. So he asked us if we had any templates that he could review. We said, no, of course not. That's why we're paying you, right? And he was great at insurance and regular conventional healthcare kind of law, big hospital systems, administration. Didn't know how to do alternative medicine, which is, for lack of a better term, that's what lawyers call functional and integrative medicine. So long story short, I engaged in a bunch of self-study, and then I also engaged a law firm to kind of help me figure out healthcare law, and specifically healthcare law for alternative medicine, so that I could be the solution for most of the doctors out there. Because what I ended up finding out was if you go to a traditional law firm and you want to set up your medical practice the right way, it's in billable hours, it's about $18,000 to $25,000. And some of you may have experienced this. What I also know is that you guys don't start your own functional medicine practice for all the money that you can make, at least not initially. So people just tended to go without any kind of legal help, and they relied on their colleagues on Facebook, not attorneys, their colleagues to say, oh yeah, I got this one from so-and-so training program, and I found this one on Google, and my cousin's ex-roommate's boyfriend is an attorney in Wyoming, so this is probably good. He kind of came up with this. And I'm here to tell you that it's not a good way to go through life, particularly if you're protecting your $500,000 investment if you're an MD. That's why I'm here, to offer something in between $25,000 and zero, because that's not a good place to be. So I founded Functional Lawyer, and initially in 2017, it was really just templates. So I still have all the templates there, everything from patient contracts, informed consent, to HIPAA, telemedicine, even some employment documents and online presence. But then after a little bit, people were wanting to ask me questions, really, because they didn't have any answers elsewhere, or they didn't want to spend the $5,000 retainer and plus more to talk to an attorney. So they were going without, and they said, well, what about if I have questions later? So I created what is now kind of the flagship thing in functional medicine law, is the Functional Lawyer membership, which is all of the documents I've got, weekly office hours with me directly to ask any questions that come up. That's all included, as well as pre-recorded education, kind of like a digital course. And I know you don't have time, so I made it really succinct and to the point. The things you need to know and nothing else. And then in addition, there are one-on-one calls with me included in the membership. And so that's kind of my whole background and story, and been helping my wife build up her practice in a membership model, and then talking to probably thousands of attorneys, thousands of doctors and other healthcare practitioners over the past 4 or 5 years, has been really enlightening and rewarding to help you guys out. So, because I know your job is to be the person that restores health to your communities. And I'm here to support that and make sure that you're doing it safely and in a wise way. We'll talk about functional medicine is getting some pushback lately, but we'll leave that for a little bit later in the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a bunch of questions. And if any of you have questions, I'd appreciate if you could type them below this video, and we'll try to get Scott to answer those as we're going. And I have a bunch that you've mentioned beforehand. But for those of you who are interested in Scott's services, if you plan on purchasing the templates, any of the templates, which are amazing, by the way, I was looking through those, and boy, I could use a lot of help with those. And then the membership itself, if you need more help and more support. But if you're going to do the templates, I'd really appreciate if you could use my link, which is in the header of this post. And the reason I'm asking that is for this page, I actually pay out of pocket 2 amazing moderators to help me manage the page and make it great for you. So I appreciate, and I am an affiliate of Scott's, and it would help me out if you were to use that link if you decide to purchase any templates today or any time going forward. So I will have in this group some resources. I'm going to be putting together a resource button for you of all the different affiliations and services that I recommend. And if you like what we're doing today, tell your friends, your medical friends that are open to alternatives, to go ahead and join this group. And please give us some hearts and thumbs up if you like having Scott on. We could try to get him on regularly if we want for your legal help and questions. And so what I'd like to do is go ahead and start and ask you a few of the questions that have already been posted. And one of them is, Stephanie is asking, if you have a Medicare private contract that all MCR patients sign before they see you, and a membership model rather than fee for service model of care delivery, so the fee is not necessarily attached to a particular DOS, can you see Medicare patients on a cash pay basis? And do you still need to opt out of Medicare to do this? I have heard conflicting opinions on this.
What is MCR?
I don't know.
All right.
Sorry.
DOS is...
yeah, maybe Stephanie, if you're watching right now, can you clarify under this post what those questions are? Maybe I'll just go to another one and we'll circle back.
I can answer the question.
Okay, go ahead and answer. Sorry.
I'm just curious. You get there worse than the military with the acronyms. So
can you please answer ASAP?
Yeah, so if you're not opted out already, you're not allowed to charge cash to Medicare beneficiaries. Full stop. You can't do it. Actually, not a full stop. There is an alternative if Medicare doesn't cover the service, and this is on you as the practitioner, as the person who is participating in Medicare, to verify with your local administrative contractor, your MAC, M-A-C, that the CPT codes and the ICD-9 codes that you would do for that patient are in fact not covered. And if that is the case, you can offer that patient what is called an ABN, or Advanced Beneficiary Notice. Now that's for free. It's a free template. It's actually available at cms.gov, and it is very standardized. So if you have one of those, that's one you can get from the internet, so long as you get it from cms.gov. And what that does is it gives the patient an option. So you're giving the beneficiary, the patient, notice in advance, ABN, that some of the services you're doing that day are non-covered. And so then you give them the choice and you tell them why they're non-covered. It can be something like Medicare doesn't cover this ever, or you've exceeded the number of appointments that Medicare will pay for, and now it will have to be cash, or various other reasons, like maybe it's preventative. So you tell them the reason, they get a chance to choose whether or not they want to just pay you a copay and then still have you bill Medicare directly. And then if they don't cover it, then they agree to be responsible for the balance. The second one is they agree to pay you in full right away and don't bother billing Medicare. And that's the one that you probably want them to choose for administrative ease, but you're not allowed to coach them on this. And then the third option is for them to say, no, thanks, I want to go see somebody that will be covered by Medicare. So the rules around ABNs are a little bit gray, and I've been spending 2 years trying to figure them out. And hopefully I'll have on a Medicare billing expert on my channel pretty soon, but it is something that is hard to figure out. So what a lot of people do who are opted into Medicare is they give the ABN and they say, it's preventative, but you have to be telling the truth when you say that. So double check with your MAC, that's Medicare Administrative Contractor. They're different by region, so I can't give you their names. Novitas, Noridian are two of the bigger ones, or they have the better websites too. Novitas and Noridian are two of the larger MACs. And do you have to opt out of Medicare to do this? To charge them cash, as you can see, the ABN presents a little bit of an administrative hurdle there, and you may end up having to bill Medicare directly anyways if they choose option A. So the least restrictions possible for charging a Medicare patient cash is to opt out. However, that comes at a cost too, and I'm going to anticipate the next question is, if I work for a hospital and I want to see patients at my functional medicine practice, can I be opted out here, but not here, or vice versa? The answer to that is no. If you're opted out, you're opted out completely. The hospital or whoever you're working for can't bill Medicare for your services if you're opted out. So if you do that, it's you're kind of all in to the opt out. I guess I didn't mean to do that, but it's all or nothing for opt outs. Yeah, I think that's the whole answer to that question.
That's a great, thank you. That's really, really helpful, I'm sure, for a lot of people. The next question is actually a pretty good one. We get,
before you do that, really fast.
Sure.
You shouldn't be giving Medicare private contracts to people if you're participating in Medicare. The Medicare private contract is for opted out providers to then give to the patients, because that Medicare private contract is also pretty standardized. What's supposed to be in it is in the code, the US code. So don't give that if you're opted in. Do give it, you're required to give it if you're opted out.
Okay.
And I have the Medicare private contract and opt-out affidavit as templates at Functional Lawyer.
Okay, great. Yeah, so go to the templates link above and you can check that out. Catherine actually has a question that I get a lot. A lot of people ask this. She says, for nurse practitioners interested in practicing functional medicine virtually using the NP license, but across multiple states, what is the best way to handle this? I know one would have to apply for an independent license in those states, but is there any way to see clients who live in a restricted practice state without a collaborating physician? Is it best to consult with a lawyer in your particular state?
Yeah, the answer is no. You shouldn't be seeing patients in a restricted state in which you need a collaborating physician. Your intuition is right, and you guys know what's right and what's wrong. Kind of trust your gut. So your intuition is right on that. If it's a state in which you are not licensed, whether independent or not, it's illegal to practice medicine if the patient's in that state. All right. If you are licensed in an independent practice state, go ahead and see patients in that state. So pretend you live in California, you want to see a patient in Florida, you've applied for the Florida telemedicine registration, which is free. So now you have a telemedicine license in Florida. Now you can start seeing patients in Florida, assuming as an NP, you qualify for autonomous practice in Florida, which isn't automatic. If you are if you have a license in a state that does require a supervising physician, you need a supervising physician who is licensed in that state as well. So in Florida, say you don't qualify for autonomous practice, you need a supervising in order to practice telemedicine here. That's just the way it goes. Does that all make sense? Did I say that correctly?
It does make sense. And I get this question a lot because some people say, well, then I want to go ahead and give up my NP license, which is like a tragedy in a way, and just practice as a coach. And I know you have thoughts about that as well. So then they as a health coach, you can certainly go across state lines, but you're no longer diagnosing, prescribing, deprescribing. What are your thoughts on that as a follow-up?
Yeah, so I have very strong opinions on this and have put out a bunch of blogs this year on this because it's one of the top questions I get. So thanks, Jody. One is, before I get to the health coaching across state lines, there's plenty of people in your state. I don't care if you live in Wyoming or Delaware or whatever, there are plenty of patients for you to see in your state. And if not, I just mentioned the Florida telemedicine license. So that's available for free. You can go to functionallawyer.com/Florida, and I have a free guide, just 6 steps. The state doesn't charge you a fee. You might have to pay your own medical boards or relevant board a fee to forward your license information to the Florida Department of Health. But otherwise, getting a telemedicine license to practice in Florida is free. And then you might need a registered agent, but that's like $50 a year. So not like $800 or anything like that for the rest of the states. So between your state and a state like Florida, and then West Virginia now too has a similar rule. Florida has 22 million people. Your state has somewhere between 500,000 and 38 million people. So between those two numbers, you can have 22 million plus patients to draw from. Most functional practices that I've seen per provider can support up to 300 patients max. So out of 22 million plus another 10 million, you can get 300 people per year, I believe. Now, if your intent is to help everybody across the world because you're so special and you're the only doctor or NP that can do this, and everybody wants your services, great. There are options for that. They are not to give up your license and practice as a health coach. And I'll tell you why in a second. But your legal options are write a book, create a course, start a YouTube channel, start to monetize that a little bit, have a podcast, do all these things that are educational only in nature that don't involve one-on-one time between you and a client or a patient. And then you're free to do that as much as you want, NP, health coach, whatever you want to say. Have a little disclaimer in there, of course, but otherwise creating educational content, products, information products, that's protected by the First Amendment. Now, First Amendment is often misconstrued, so let me pause there before I get to the health coach and give me up your license thing. First Amendment doesn't mean Facebook can't censor you. Facebook can censor you. They're a private entity. Government action is what is protected by the First Amendment. So they can't throw you in jail. The government can't do anything to you because of your speech unless you incite a riot or sorts of stuff like that. But generally, you have a First Amendment right to write a book, write a course, educational in nature only. Should you give up your license to become a health coach and practice all across the country? Given what I just told you, there are plenty of other options. So I would really hate to see that. Of course, it's your choice to do this, but you should know what the scope of a health coach is. Health coach is really limited to like cheerleader, rah-rah, behavioral health, behavioral changes. So things like, oh, you can't seem to get to bed on time. Well, have you tried blue blocking glasses? Have you tried putting your phone in the other room and just laying in your bed in the dark from 8 o'clock on, or just reading a book or something like that? So you don't like, oh, your doctor put you on a low FODMAP diet. Here's what that means. Here are some good recipes that are good for you to eat. And if you have children, here are some good ones for your kids. That's kind of what a health coach does. Accountability, support, mental behavioral changes, and then maybe some food prep ideas. What I understand, and I just put out my this week's blog video thing that I put out each week, was just about this exact topic, actually. So lots of people think that if they drop their license or even keep their license, but just call themselves a coach or a consultant, they can practice however they want, including, ordering labs, recommending supplements, putting them on different diet regimens, putting them on different lifestyle medicine regimens. It's still medicine. So it's not what you call it, it's what you're doing. And it's not what I say, it's what the medical board says in that state. So it's illegal to do. And I hate to throw that word around, but this one actually has criminal penalties associated with it. So I don't hesitate to put that out there because practicing medicine without a license is just like me practicing medicine. And I'm in a position where I could hurt people because I was pre-med for like 1 semester, right? You guys are not, and I know it's not fair right now because you have all this wealth of information and you have people to help, and it's not fair. But as I tell my children, not to call you children, but as I tell my children, listen, man, sometimes things aren't fair and we got to make the best of them. And let's see what other options, instead of just focusing on the no, let's look at other ways to have a yes. So writing a book, creating a podcast. Like e-courses are so easy to do. Like online courses are so easy. And you can help people out of your state, and they're a great kind of part of your practice for patients that are in your state. So can't afford to see me, here's my e-course, it's $297. You want to see me, but you're not ready to commit to the whole thing that I'm doing over here for whatever you're charging. Okay, try this $297. And then when they hit a plateau, they'll come back to you. Or if they're really sick, they'll see that you were great, that they got good results from your course. And then now they really want to work with you. So it's a good win-win for keeping yourself safe, for collecting some extra revenue from out of state people that call you. And then kind of as like a tripwire offer, or like a low cost offer into your larger ecosystem of offerings that you have in your practice today.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know a colleague of mine teaches a health club safety course, and I can put that in the links also if you guys are interested. But I know that if you're doing it in the spirit of education, because let's face it, our patients, clients are out there buying crap supplements from Walmart, right? They're out there buying that. And is it okay then to say, based on your symptoms, what the research has shown on this particular supplement is this. So you're saying that, if it were me, I might do this, or just to not to say I'm prescribing this supplement, but to educate them on the benefits of it. And then they can say, well, I really would like to try some of that magnesium. You could say, well, that's a great decision you've made. So, so they're making the decision. Is that sort of language is okay as a coach? I'm just curious. I just want to make sure and clarify your take on it, because that's what I've understood with it. And you have to be careful, of course, but.
Yeah, so coaches aren't allowed to like create protocols. I mean, of course you can say, you should have.
It's not illegal to educate though. To educate them on what supplements can do, or educate them on what certain foods can do, et cetera.
Yeah, I can teach you. I can go read up on vitamin C and teach you guys it. But
right.
If you say, I'm feeling tired at 2:00, or if I say I'm feeling tired at 2:00 or have these symptoms, and you say, well, you should try these things, it's getting blurry, right? Like I don't know where the bright line is there. But the definition of medicine, the practice of medicine, varies slightly from state to state, but overall, it's very broad. It's diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, symptoms, illness, ailment, condition, whether or not you're using prescriptions, whether or not you're doing conventional medicine. So it kind of covers everything. So yeah, this is the area of, there's no like, yes, you can, no, you cannot for that particular scenario. And so you just got to do the best you can. If someone asks you about certain supplements, or they come to you with symptoms or whatever, say, check with your doctor, but studies have shown that ashwagandha is really good for like calming down. But check with your doctor to make sure it doesn't interact with anything negatively that you're already taking. Or if you're like, hey, this GNC brand vitamin C is mostly filler, you want to get this Nordic Naturals brand of vitamin C, it's way more pure, it's easier to absorb. Like you could teach you that part. But if it's, it's getting hairy if you're creating supplement protocols for somebody.
Got it. Okay, great. And I actually have another follow-up question for that. And I hope we can get through all these questions. So, but you had said, there's plenty of people in your state, and I agree 100% on that. There's people all over the world trying to find functional medicine practitioners in their area. And so I'm wondering if, but obviously this is US, Scott's talking about US in general, and I'm sure there's some other state specific laws too that you could check into, but one of my colleagues says, I will not see patients out of state. She's a nurse practitioner, but if they fly in once a year to see her in person, then she'll take them on as a patient. Is that getting into some gray areas there, or?
Yeah. So I know this scenario well. This is an area where the laws and what we know so far hasn't really caught up to what people are trying to do. I was hopeful, I still am, but I'm hopeful that all these barriers will go away quite soon. However, I just read an article yesterday or the day before where I think it was Mississippi who, I think, no offense to Mississippians, I think ranks like 50th in healthcare. Instead of opening up their borders, they're kind of reviewing and trying to keep like borders for licensees. So that was a little bit disheartening, but overall, the trend line is going that the barriers will come down. I mentioned Florida, so functionallawyer.com/Florida for that free guide. West Virginia has a very similar law. Connecticut, I wouldn't even bother with Texas, but Oregon, and there's about 12 total. So they all have some form of telemedicine only license. And there are plenty of options out there for you to do that. Did I answer the question correctly? I got talking in my head and thinking ahead, and I forgot the question kind of halfway through.
No, I think that's good. So I know that Katie, my friend Katie, has a question, and she is asking if there are any conflicts of interest in working in an insurance-based model. I think it's sort of similar question that we've had, but this is insurance-based model. She's currently in the federal government at the VA, and then she has her own functional medicine consultation side gig that is cash pay. And I think I'm dying to hear what you're saying about this.
Is that it? Conflict of interest. That'll depend on her contract with the VA and what that looks like. If there's a non-competition clause, then it gets into, is what she's doing at the VA, I would assume, is conventional care. Is that the same? Does it compete with preventative or functional medicine care? So that one kind of depends on your agreement with the VA. And the other thing is, if you're taking insurance, I guess this is a really common scenario too, where you're working for a private clinic or a government payer, and they accept insurance, although the VA is not quite private insurance, what I'm talking about. So they accept private insurance, and then you want to start your own practice over here. There's a way to do that. If that practice is under contract with Blue Cross and Aetna and whoever, and you can remain there, you just write a letter to all of those insurance companies, and I have a template for that, that says, hey, we're still under contract, we're still in the agreement at, Austin Functional Medicine, but I'm starting a new practice over here, or Austin Conventional Medicine, let's say. I'm starting a new practice over here. It's going to be cash pay. It's a different entity, and it's functional medicine. It's not subject to that agreement. And then that's then you have to consult the participation agreements that have been signed either by you or by the practice you work for to make sure. But most of the time, they're okay with it.
Okay, great. And she does have some other questions, actually. The first one, she said, Scott's great, looking forward to this. So she said, I'd be curious to know recommendations regarding malpractice. Does this typical coverage work for functional medicine? And if not, what would the recommendation be?
You need to get a malpractice sponsor, because I give everybody the same name. I need to call them and get paid for sending everyone their way. But as far as malpractice goes, just be as frank as you can with them and tell them what you're doing. If you're doing crazy chelation stuff, tell them. If you're doing regular lifestyle medicine, tell them. If it's an insurance company that understands what functional medicine is, it will probably be a different and likely lower premium. If it's a company that doesn't know what functional medicine is, they may just call you family medicine, internal medicine, or something like that. So I don't have a relationship with, I don't have a paid relationship with anybody, but my wife's insurance provider is Cunningham Group, cunninghamgroupins.com. Again, I'm not endorsing them. I don't get paid by them, but that's who we use. And they know functional medicine. I've sent a bunch of people their way. So give them a call. But my advice as far as insurance goes is be as honest as you can, because you want to make sure it's included and covered about what you're doing. Ask about telemedicine, particularly if you have more than one state license. Ask if you're covered in all the states in which you're licensed. And then consider a cyber policy as well. Ransomware attacks are up, cyber attacks are up, and not only would you not have access to your computer or your files or anything like that, and that becomes a HIPAA breach, which can be upwards of $500 to $5,000 per record. So if you have 500 patients at $500 per patient record, I'm not great at math. That's why I'm a lawyer. But something like $2,500 or $25,000, I think. $25,000. Anyway, it adds up quick. So consider a cyber insurance policy as well.
Okay, great. Great idea. Great advice there. Katie is also asking, I think I can't remember which one I already asked. Let's see. Oh, she's doing two questions. She's doing functional medicine consultation versus video conferencing. Does she need to see the person to person first to establish care? And also she wants to know, is opting out to Medicare as scary as it feels?
Yeah, it can be scary. So establishing care. All right, if you're scared of opting out of Medicare, there's a one-time kind of like cold feet provision that if you opt out, let's say your effective date is January 1, you have 90 days to change your mind. So all the way up to April 1 or maybe like March 28th. I don't know how the days of the month work out, but 90 days to change your mind the very first time you opt out. Then after that, you're opted out for another 1.75 years, so 2 years total. Towards the end of that second year, you can re-opt in. If circumstances change and life happens, you can do that. But the majority of people that I work with and that I talk to have never been happier, but they're excited to be done with it. That is, of course, if you can, go both feet into your practice and you don't have to maintain another job for whatever reason. If you have to do that, then ABNs are probably your best course of action. But another option too, I didn't mention earlier, is just not seeing Medicare patients at all if you have to remain opted in. So you work at the hospital or private practice, they're in Medicare, you are in your own practice and you don't want to deal with Medicare, either ABNs or whatever, you can just say, I'm sorry, I only see people who are, not in, I can't see Medicare, because you can explain it and patients really understand. Most people are rational and they'll understand that Medicare, reimbursements go down. It's a huge administrative burden on you. So in order to keep your costs low, at least for now, you can't see Medicare patients. But if you have an online course, ship them into the online course, you get, 200, 100, 300 bucks from them. That way you still get to serve them without having to get bogged down with all the Medicare records. And then establishing care virtually, I will say in most states, you do not have to see the patient in person in most states. So probably like 48 of them. Here's kind of the general rule on that. If a telemedicine visit would be as good as or better than the standard of care as an in-person visit, you can establish a relationship, a provider-patient relationship via telemedicine. What does that mean? It means in your professional medical judgment, if it's not okay to establish an appointment or establish a relationship over Zoom, then don't do it. If you're just doing lifestyle, you're getting your history and it doesn't require hands-on touch or in-person observations of them, then it's probably fine. But if you're an orthopedic surgeon and you're evaluating like somebody's wrist, you probably want to see them in person. And that's an extreme example, but the ones that are closer to the middle, you got to use your professional medical judgment, which means basically, would other doctors think this is a valid, way to treat somebody? And if it is, then you can establish care virtually in most states.
Great advice. Yeah.
94% of states.
Okay. I think Katie is in Rhode Island, if I remember correctly. You said there are a couple of states where that wasn't the case. But anyway, I won't put you on the spot too much on that.
Yeah, I've got it in a spreadsheet, but
Katie, if I got your state wrong, forgive me. It might be Connecticut, but I'm pretty sure it's Rhode Island. Anyway, so Dawn asked a question that's sort of already been asked. It's about accepting clients from out of state, working remote, if you're functioning as a functional medicine wellness practitioner, not as an NP. But I have a question about that. If you decide to keep your license and work in the capacity of a coach, if your contract says I am working as a coach, even though you're keeping your license as an NP, I mean, you're saying it's the same way. You have to do it as a coach. You wouldn't be able to do any sort of, we talked about what you could and couldn't do. I don't know. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but maybe if you could clarify that a little.
Yeah, so I tend to discourage licensed practitioners from being a health coach only
Right.
in one-on-one situations, because you know what you know, and you can't unknow it, basically. And to have a tool in your pocket and not be able to use it, super hard, right?
Right.
So I think it's a slippery slope and just really easy to go ahead and start basically developing protocols or seeing how they present and then making recommendations based on that, which is kind of within the practice of medicine, and it's beyond the scope of a health coach. So I tend to discourage people who are licensed from acting as a health coach in one-on-one situations for that reason. Again, there's plenty of options out there. If you, let's say you live in a tri-state area, you can go get those other 2 licenses if you don't already have them. There are a number of telemedicine only states that I talked about that give you a license only for telemedicine, and you can expand your available patient pool to, let's say you live in California, New York, or Texas, and you grab Florida, and then now all of a sudden you've got about 1/5 of the country at your disposal to legally practice NP or medicine or whatever your license level is. So I really discourage it. If you wanted to do it and you could be careful with that, go for it. But just letting you know what my reasons are for discouraging it.
Okay, thank you. And Robin has a question. I think you've covered some of this, but I have a follow-up question to it. So I'll read her question and then I'm going to ask another one. What are the legalities of working in a setting in which an NP is credentialed with insurances, including Medicare, but also wants to practice in a private setting for fee or service and not bill insurance? Is it illegal not to accept insurance in one practice and charge patients fee for service? Should patients whom the NP is doing a functional medicine approach practice with sign an ABN, or does the provider have to choose the practice area and either opt in or out completely from Medicare and other insurances? You sort of covered that, but
I felt like I answered it. There is a way to do insurance on one side and then not insurance on the other, and that's writing them a letter. The template is called Letter to Insurance Carriers, and there's instructions on how to do that. And then if you, if you're in Medicare and you're seeing somebody out, in your practice, and you think Medicare won't cover your services, yes, use an ABN. And that is also correct that you have to be in or out of Medicare. You can't have one or the other.
Okay, and my follow-up to that is, I had a colleague a physician, who was transitioning more into functional medicine and still accepting insurance. And in order to transition to more of a cash pay model, what she did was she took, still accepted insurance, but charged an additional $150 per appointment with the patient to see it, to come into her clinic. Now, is that legal? I was just really curious about that. Or does it depend on the state you're in, or have you heard of that?
That, to me, at first blush, sounds illegal. You're not allowed.
I won't mention names.
I mean, whether it's illegal criminally or whether it's just kind of a violation of your contract with the insurance company, and it's probably both, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud. There's rules against that. But if you wanted to do something like that, kind of have sort of a hybrid, what you can do is kind of use a concierge type model. That doesn't mean you have to be 24/7 available to everybody, but what it does mean is that you can charge a monthly fee for people to be a part of your practice, and then also charge insurance for when they come in. That monthly fee, though, in order to not be illegal, has to be for things that are not service related. So the increased availability for messaging, increased availability for phone calls, appointments within 48 hours, access to any kind of like educational courses or classes that you've pre-recorded or anything like that. So it has to kind of be like ancillary benefits or fringe benefits kind of, and not the direct delivery of services for that monthly payment.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm wondering if they could get creative and do like it'll include a health coaching package and things like that, where they're paying that fee, and then you bill insurance when they come in for appointments with the physician or NP or whatever, or PA.
Yeah, you can get creative around this where it gets a little bit more dicey. I would say talk to an attorney, but it sounds like she didn't. There are options out there to get really creative with it. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Dana has a question about PAs. So, how are physician assistants doing functional medicine on their own without supervising physician? Are they working more as a health coach capacity and not using their PA license, being very careful in the wording that they aren't treating or functioning as a PA? Again, similar question, but many states don't allow PAs to work independently.
Yeah.
I
How
don't
are they
know any
doing?
states. Can any of them work independently?
No, no,
Oh,
they are by definition not allowed to work independently. But those PAs that you see that do have their own practice, and it looks like they're the only person there, I guarantee they have a supervising physician somewhere offsite, ready to satisfy that. Either I guarantee that, or they're not doing things legally. So if they're ordering labs and stuff, they're probably practicing medicine without a license if they don't have a supervising. But if they are just acting as a health coach, my thoughts on that. I discourage it for licensed personnel. So the answer is they probably have a supervisor somewhere in the background.
okay. Great to know. And also, Ebbs wants to know what is needed to implement nutritionists and coaches into the practice and operate telemedicine across state lines, elaborating on pay and commissions. So if you wanted to hire nutritionists or coaches for your practice, how does that work? And I think you have templates for that as well, don't you?
Yeah, I have an employment contract, and I also have an independent contractor agreement for health coaches and nutritionists, and people of that level. So if you're going to hire somebody as an employee, now you have employees, and you have to fill out a W-2 each year. So you talk to your bookkeeper or accountant about that. Then with independent contractor, it's a little bit different and easier, but again, check with your accountant, because there's penalties if you label someone a contractor and they are actually more an employee, financial penalties. So what do you need to do to incorporate them? If it's a health coach, then make sure, I would recommend having somebody who is only a health coach, so that there's no possibility that they step outside their scope. And hopefully somebody that understands their scope, and if they're part of your practice, can refer people back to you to check on their plan, right? We have a health coach nutritionist at my wife's practice. She's an independent contractor, and it's part of, we have run a membership practice. So it's part of the membership. They get 3 appointments with the health coach nutritionist, and as part of the membership, and they can pay for more if they want. But each year they get up to 3 with her. It's kind of a vague question, so I don't understand if I answered it right or not.
Yeah, I think that's good. So I know a lot of practices are doing this now. If you look at the Parsley Health model, they're a big functional practice. They have 3 locations, and they have functionally trained health coaches on staff, where, from what I understand, the physician will see the patient 5 times, or physician or NP or PA 5 times a year. And then the health coach sees that patient 5 times a year. And then they all collaborate on the treatment of that patient. So I think it's a really kind of cool model. And I think it's where medicine's going. And it is a membership model that they provide. All their patients pay a monthly fee on that. So Lori's asking, for what kinds of things do you, this is a good one, loaded question. For what kinds of things do you see telemedicine NPs getting sued?
Yeah, before I answer that, I just want to say we have a health coach at our practice. I'm not anti-health coach. I am anti you putting your licenses in jeopardy by calling yourself a coach and practicing medicine. So telemedicine NPs getting sued. Well, telemedicine and medicine are the same. So I'm going to remove telemedicine from that equation, except for if you're practicing in a state in which you're not licensed, which is illegal. The penalties for that are criminal prosecution and civil fines as well. What do people get sued for medicine? I mean, malpractice, but the majority of times it's really just patient disgruntlement or lack of customer service. I know none of you do that because you're all good caretakers, but really when people get upset, that's when disputes happen. And if you can communicate effectively, transparently about what you're doing, their role as your partner in their own health journey, and you use a really, really good informed consent process, I think that can absolve a lot of issues, but really it ultimately comes down to, you're not going to prevent every single lawsuit. There's somebody that's going to be upset with you for no good reason. You did everything right. And that's where the informed consent really helps you, if you can prove that you guys have had this conversation and that we've talked about it over and over again. A lot of times I see disgruntlement from patients, and it kind of leads to threats where either their spouse is kind of not supportive and really skeptical of functional medicine, like, oh, they're just slamming you with supplements and feet, lab tests, and it's all a bunch of hooey. That can happen. But then you can manage that situation, say, invite your spouse in the next time you have an appointment, or invite them onto Zoom and we can take care of that. The other one is other doctors or other healthcare professionals who are not functionally trained. Let's say your patient goes and they're excited to tell their PCP that their blood pressure is down and whatever you've helped them with. And the PCP goes, well, why would they do that? That's not standard of care. So then the patient gets really upset and they're like, well, yeah, what the heck? Either their PCP, or sometimes if they're really sick, they'll go to like an academic medical center, and those guys are, assumed to be the best of the best. So they will say the same thing, like, I wouldn't even start any kind of treatment protocol for you. These are all within the normal range, right? So then the patient starts thinking like, well, what am I paying all this money for if this guy at Princeton or Harvard, right, is telling me that I'm normal? So that's kind of where the informed consent helps again, but really just being transparent with what you're doing. Will you make a mistake? Probably. Or will you choose one path and maybe that didn't work and you have to choose another path? That's okay. That's within the standard of care. Just because there are two valid paths doesn't mean you get punished for choosing one that either didn't work or had a bad reaction, if that was, part of a proper protocol. So I can't really tell you what is the one biggest reason why people get sued, but if I could boil it down to really specifics, it's just kind of patients being disgruntled, lack of communication, lack of customer service. Because now they're also customers. They're not just patients in a mill where you're seeing 30, 35 of them a day. Now you're seeing 5 a day. And so, you develop these relationships over time, and kind of taking care of them is now part of your business strategy. And you're not just kind of flying by with 7-minute appointments and then take it up with the front desk if you have any issues, because I got like 20 more people to do today. So I think customer service is the best way, outside of good, proper, informed consent, and just having dialogues all the time with the patients about, what their plan is. Are they still okay with it? This is what we'd like to do. And, people really appreciate too if you accommodate them. So let's say they don't have a ton of money, but they really are scrounging it up to work with you. Maybe you can use your expertise and experience to skip that lab because you pretty much know what it's going to say anyways, based on your suspicions, and maybe just start the recommended protocols based on that. And people appreciate you for that as well. So customer service, conversation, transparent conversations, customer service, and then being a good doctor, being a good practitioner. But that's not going to stop every single suit, but that does a lot of good as well.
Yeah, be good at what you do, and really get educated on functional medicine. Always be a student of this, because the things are always changing and advice is always changing. But I think your point to being really communicative with your patients is so important in explaining that functional medicine is a process. And there's no real right way to do it, as opposed to there's several ways that you could do things more than one way to skin a cat kind of thing. And sometimes healing takes time, and really to frame it that way, this is a process, and some things we may have to do a little bit of trial and error on some things, but so they understand that, they get that in the beginning. But anyway, I'll do one more question because we're running out of time, but I wanted to show you before we move on, Scott's website here. This is I just want to show you the templates portion. You can use the link above to get to this, and you'll see that there's a whole bunch of wonderful templates. Now the membership is wonderful too, but this is the membership practice bundle, and it gives you a whole bunch of different agreements here. So you can look at these bundles, and then you can purchase individual letters and not letters, but documents. So I'll just go through a little bit so they can take a peek at this.
Yeah, they're in Microsoft Word format, and there's a video accompanying each one where I walk through the document and highlight areas for you to either know about, to change, or to be able to explain to your patients in plain English. So there is a little bit of instructions as well.
There's more on their website essentials. So there's some website templates here for your privacy policy. I know that privacy policy is super important to have that, and some of these other disclaimers, website disclaimers, etc. So
I know it can be overwhelming too. So I do have a consultation that's kind of a reduced fee. It's $150 for 45 minutes to an hour, or you can talk to me and I can make recommendations based on your situation. Or you can just talk and ask questions as well. But I can recommend certain templates if you're not sure which ones are the right ones for you.
For sure. So, anyway, I'll take one more question from someone who hasn't asked already. And Scott, if you get a chance, you're in the group now, maybe you could go through under this video. There's a bunch of other questions, like follow-up questions that some people have, if you don't mind taking a look at those. But Steve is asking, he's a California licensed acupuncturist and nationally certified with training in functional medicine. Any issues with scope of practice for functional medicine telemedicine? We get into the same question in terms of the scope with telemedicine with an acupuncturist. And he also says, is there a way to get a legal release by disclosing up front regarding a practitioner's license, like MD, NP, licensed acupuncturist, but also trained in functional medicine, and that these functional medicine services, which are not necessarily standard of care, within their scope of practice? I don't know if I read that right, but
that's a long question.
Go.
If I heard it correctly, the advice is really simple. Just stay within the scope of your license, and then stay within the standard of care for whatever you're doing. So scope of practice is a good place to kind of clarify. Scope of practice is for the license, and then standard of care is different for each individual licensee based on your education, training, and experience. So for example, 2 MDs, same med school, same residency, then they go on to different fellowships, and one goes and learns a lot more about functional medicine and how to do all of that kind of stuff. They're going to have different standards of care. The one that's really more conventional trained shouldn't be ordering, Dutch tests because they don't know what the heck they are. But the other one can, because they do, and they've had the education, training, and experience. So just to clarifying there, that scope is license specific, but standard is individual provider specific.
Got it. Wonderful. Actually, Bobby has one more, if you don't mind. I think this is quick. What about communicating directly with the client's MD on supplement recommendations that may help patient and getting their approval before giving it to a patient still considering practicing medicine? So I guess I'm assuming Bobby's a practitioner that's thinking of doing it in the capacity of a coach and asking, what about, going to the physician and, check with your physician. I think you answered that. Just like check with your physician before you do it, but not that the physicians are, any of the conventional ones are trained much in supplements or nutrition at all, honestly, but it's.
Yeah, but if you wanted to be a coach, and this is a good way to kind of bridge that gap, is to reach out to some of these doctors in your area or in your state, because they're overwhelmed. They end up having to do a lot of the health coaching responsibilities in their appointments. And, sometimes they don't have all the behavioral health change training that health coaches do. So reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to take some of the burden off your hands. Let's, see if we can sit down and have a tea and figure out a way to make this work. Where, like I mentioned, we send patients to our health coach 3 times. If they want to continue to see her after that, they can do that independently. And she has her own practice that's on its own. She sees people off the streets, not really a good term, but independently of the practice.
She's a nurse, actually, Bobby. She just clarified.
Oh, okay.
RN.
RN, yeah. So if you can be affiliated with or at least have a couple of docs that you can refer patients back and forth to, that's a great way to kind of, reduce any kind of risk or liabilities there, is what I would say. But hopefully you refer them back to the doctor creates the protocol, and then as a health coach, you help implement it. That is the ideal way to do it. I do realize that it's a gray area because health coaches aren't recognized by anybody in the country yet. So all of this is kind of gray and spurious. But I will say, as soon as you cross the line of that licensed professional role or scope, then it gets a lot hairier there. And it's still so early in the game, and the prosecution is so, I guess, not reported sometimes, and also maybe not there yet. But just know, I've said it a bunch of times today in this hour, just do the right thing. I put out a blog this week, character is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. And that really was addressing health coaches and more specifically licensed providers who want to act like health coaches and practice wherever they want. So not to give you guys a sermon or a moralistic view here to close it out, but come on, do the right thing. And that way you don't have to worry.
I think, I don't know how much policing there is of this, but I know that, the pharmaceutical lobby is pretty darn strong, and who knows what's going to happen with this. But anyway, Scott, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was super helpful, I'm sure, for so many people. If you guys appreciated this, give us some hearts and tell your friends about this group, have them come in and join us. We're already over 7,000 strong in this group now, which makes us the largest group of functional medicine practitioners on Facebook, which I love. And I appreciate all of you in doing this work. It's courageous work to do. It's going against the tide, and I know there's a lot of pushback, but people need us. And thank you so much for being part of this group. If you enjoyed this and want to have other speakers that are this helpful or come into the group.
Nobody can be this helpful, Jody.
I don't know if it.
I mean, close
to Scott set a pretty high bar, but we'll see if we can get other people there as helpful to come into the group. We'd appreciate if you could use my links when you're purchasing any of the speakers that are in this group to help us keep this group alive. It does get pretty expensive for me to run it, and with the help I have, vetting people, making sure they're licensed practitioners coming into this group, and just keeping the posts, keeping the spam out, keeping it a good resource for all of you. So thank you so much for being part of the group. And Scott, thanks again so much for coming in here. It was really awesome. You really know your stuff, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I'll be back anytime if I didn't offend anybody too badly.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to have you on as a regular guest. So keep putting your questions below. And thanks again. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.